I think you could make an argument, kind of like I was hinting at, that if you win your conference, it's extremely valuable. Maybe you're incentivizing more interest in those conference championship games. So people who maybe were an SEC fan were watching Arizona State pound Iowa State with a little bit more interest. The other thing would be, I think it is pretty interesting if you were to change the home sites to where maybe in the quarters we have Boise State hosting Penn State. Like that's like it's kind of almost like the essence of college football of going a higher ranked team going on the road to play at a G5 team and gives them a better chance to advance. So I think that's kind of it, would be just rewarding conference champions even more, incentivizing maybe a home game. I mean, maybe if I was to say, if to compromise the situation, maybe another thing would be you just maybe give, a home game to like if they were not one of the top four. So in this case, like Arizona State would host a home game. So
Wait,
huh?
What?
Does that make sense?
No.
No. Okay. So if you're not in like the top four, like Arizona State as a conference champion would get to host a playoff.
That's the argument for doing this. I'm asking for the other.
Yes.
Right, I'm asking for the argument to keep it as it is.
No, that's it. I think it's just that you were just incentivizing conference champions and just saying, okay, well, hey, Arizona State, all these like Boise State, like they get to host a playoff game. Like that would be it for me. I think it's just kind of like it's a college football thing.
I still don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
If currently you're jumping those champions up to the top four, they do not get a home game. So again, I don't know what you're talking about. But
I'm talking about a potential compromise. That's what I was getting at. Like to me, their straight seeding makes sense.
Of course.
The next thing would be, if you want to do some sort of compromise structure, it would be the opportunity that in a situation,
so like the NFL, like the NFL structure, where you move them up a little bit, but not a lot.
Yes, they would just host they would just compromise and let them host a playoff.
Well,
I'm not saying I would vouch for that. I'm just trying to throw out different scenarios here.
I'm very easily confused because I didn't ask you for a third path, and then you gave me a third path, which is also creative, and I appreciate that. No, I think like what it amounts to, if your argument is I want the Boise States and the Arizona States of the world like last year to be further along in the tournament, isn't that a participation trophy? I understand why, because they don't have the resources, or G5 teams can't. I understand the arguments and the dynamics here, but that's a participation trophy is what you're doing. Then it's the same reason I think that automatic qualifiers for the SEC and for the Big Ten, 4 of them, is also a participation trophy. I think you should be earning your way into your seeding into the tournament based on merit, not based on geographic alignment that began 100 years ago arbitrarily. It seems silly to me. And so I think if you're anti-AQ, which I am, and I think you are, then I think you have to be pro straight seeding. I think otherwise those are conflicting ideas, which again, I understand people are complicated. So I'm just trying to see the argument to keep it how it was. And I can hear like the G5 mafia on Twitter, many of whom you and I know closely, like media reporters that are just like G5 shills, which again, we need those folks. I could just see them being like, oh, this screws Boise State, the Mountain West. I can't believe they're getting knocked down to 12 every year. And they're going to have to play number 1 or number 5 or whatever. And I'm like, I hear you. I understand the merits of that argument. It's just a participation trophy at that point. It's not the merits of a championship. It's not what we're going for here.
Can I make the argument that it might actually be easier to win a playoff game if you're doing straight seeding in your Boise State, because they would have played Indiana last year in the first round. So the first round games last year would have been Clemson, Notre Dame at Notre Dame, Indiana hosting Boise State, Ohio State hosting Arizona State. That's pretty interesting. And Tennessee, SMU. I think if I was SMU and Boise State, I might feel a little bit better about my chances of winning those games as opposed to playing at Penn State. And then, of course, Boise played Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl.
You're just like the assumption is that everybody got knocked down 2 slots, and so therefore they are 2 slots better than where they should have been. Or they're 2 slots worse than where they should have been. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. I could see that. 12 on the road against 5 is a better chance to win than 4 and a bye week. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
I
probably
mean,
not that different, really.
every year is also different. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to, the 5 seed some years could be as close to the 1, and some years like the 5 could be a pretty steep drop
Yeah.
off after that top 4.
So nothing has been decided for the following year. This is just for this one year. They're debating a lot of different things about the following playoff structure. I'm curious what you think about the voting and why Boise State's or the G5 conference commissioners and let's say the ACC and the Big 12, like they had to give a little bit on this to the Big 10 and the SEC. So I'm curious because it could hurt all of them in theory, not named the Big 10 and the SEC, the other 7 conferences. Why did they vote for this in your mind? What's the kickback on the back end here?
Well, I think there's 2 things. The first one would be that if you are one of those 4 highest rated champions, so this would be Boise State, they incentivized it this year to where, you got 4 million for getting to the first round, 4 million to the quarter. So last year, if you didn't play in the first round, you still got 4 million. Looking at you, Boise State and Arizona State. So that's the incentive is still there. Like they're basically going, if you are one of those highest rated teams financially, they will be rewarded the same way. I think the other thing is kind of a more long-term play, and Greg Sankey kind of shot this down a little bit at the SEC meetings, but I think essentially saying what's best for college football, trying to put a carrot out there to the Big Ten and SEC because they control the future of the playoffs, saying, look, we did this. Here's our olive branch. Now you have to give some as well. So sort of some give and take there. I don't know that it's necessarily going to work, but I guess that's probably their
Uh,
thinking is if they give a little, maybe they get a little later too.
well, that's what I'm asking. What is it that
Yeah.
they're going to get? And I don't see what it's going to be.